Notice that this regularly scheduled meeting of the Frenchtown Board of Education has been provided in accordance with the Open Public Meeting Act by notification to the Hunterdon County Democrat on January 12th, 2023. A copy of this notice has also been posted at the public school, at the municipal building, and filed with the borough clerk. And we'll say the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Blackburn.
Here.
Mrs. Bobrowski.
Here.
Mr. Dermody.
Here.
Ms. Howard.
Here.
Ms. Nakahara.
Here.
Ms. Portello. Here. Mrs. Nugent.
Here. At this time, We have no members of the public other than our auditors, so we'll move on to our auditors. We have Laura is here tonight, and she's going to be doing a presentation for us.
It's a very big audience.
I know, don't get nervous.
I was trying not to. So I have Kelsey with me. She's one of our team members. She actually does a lot of the work for me. One of the things that you notice over the years when we've been coming for a presentation, it hasn't happened until springtime. So it's a lot colder right now. But we're finally received the items from the state in a timely manner. So we get to enjoy coming in here during the fall time and presenting the audit. Last night I gave Teresa her 130 something page report. I don't think you feel like reading all of that, so we condensed it again down to a lot less, and gave you some visuals with it, because looking at numbers all day, even for me, gets tiring too. We have similar graphs to the prior years. There are areas we might have expanded a bit on, try and change things up a little bit. If there's anything that you want to know more of, or for us to highlight in future years, feel free to reach out to Teresa. We're always looking for better ways to kind of relay the information to you also. So with the numbers that are presented in front of you, those numbers that we were waiting for the state from, they're usually an in and out situation. They're only for accounting purposes. Doesn't really reflect the cash on hand. So when I give you the numbers in the packet, you'll notice that if you were to compare them to the actual audit, they might not necessarily match up because I've taken those pieces out. I want to focus on the cash on hand we have actually available to you to be able to utilize. The information that we're pointing out has to relate to our pension benefits, our other post-employment benefits. Again, that's information that's provided by the state, not actually cash on hand. Before we get to the numbers though, of course, one of the most important things for the business office is whether or not they have recommendations or suggestions. The suggestion would be something that goes into the audit, that may be something that we noticed, that might be something that needs to be addressed, but it's not completely a recommendation. A recommendation is more severe. That's something that we actually have to do a corrective action plan on. Not for Teresa though. Her and the business office do a great job here. This is one of the districts that I like to bring my new staff to because it's a great learning opportunity for them. Teresa isn't afraid to open up the doors. We had a nice meeting with the superintendent as he moved into his new position. We're happy for him about that. But she's not afraid to share those numbers with him. And so it speaks a lot about your numbers too. She's not afraid to talk about them. She's not afraid to handle them. And the business office, it speaks to that too. So we do want to give them kudos in that area. Before the numbers, we did the same thing as prior years where we have the current year, the prior year, the increase, decrease during that time period, as well as comparing it to 10 years ago. There are little tidbits off to the side, and we'll cover a majority of them. And then behind those, you'll notice that we have graphs. Some of it covers just the current year, and then there's other pieces that'll show you the 10-year period, how the numbers have kind of trended during that period. During the current year, we had total revenues of $3,116,000. The increase from the prior year was about $39,000. Tuition increased from the prior year as a result of our enrollment for our pre-K increasing, which is a great sign. Our miscellaneous revenues had also increased from the prior year, thanks to our interest rates finally increasing. We had also received $172,000 in grants. About $113,000 of this was related to COVID funding. We don't expect these funds to kind of continue forever, so we are kind of coming near to the end on that. Now going to our first set of colorful graphs. You'll notice that at the top, we have the current breakdown of the current year's revenue. The top right is one of my favorites as a taxpayer, seeing where the trending for our tax rate is going over the last 10 years. You'll notice a lot of those lines, besides the regional school rate, tends to stay pretty steady or just kind of slowly incline, which is a great sign. Because we are a smaller district, the rate for the high school does impact us a bit more from year to year, depending on the enrollment that's going there now. You'll notice with the tax levy, again, we have a nice steady increase going there. The state sources, there is one here that kind of stands out. It looks like it's an error. It's not, I promise. We had triple checked this number. During that year, we had received the SDA funding, for a major project that we had going on. So you might see that spike kind of happen in upcoming years if we have received another grant, which I believe we probably did. Same thing for the federal sources. We had the COVID funding coming in, so we did see the spike over the last 2 years occurring with that. I expect that spike to also occur in the year that we're in now. And then with tuition in 2021, obviously we had COVID occurring and we didn't have our preschool. So now we're kind of seeing the trends go back up. As for our expenditure side of things, we had approximately $2,880,000, a $20,000 increase over the prior year. Our largest increase was related to instructional costs for about $42,000. Tuition had also increased from the prior year. This is one of those areas that's really difficult to control. You have one student come in that has a lot of special needs, they might need to go to another special district. And then you'll notice a lot of times with these special districts, especially the private schools, one year we might have been paying $275 for a day for the student to attend. And then the following year, now all of a sudden the prices actually increased to, I think it was $310 almost for the same student to go to the same school. So it's hard to control. It makes it very difficult when we get the budget time too. The student instruction related services expense had actually decreased from the prior year. And then over the last 10 years, we've only had an increase of approximately $135,000 for our expenditures in total, with our largest increase being student and instruction related services during that time period. Again, going back to our graphs, we have a breakdown of the current year, and then we have the 10-year trending. One of the interesting comments I had from a colleague when we were talking about budgeting, we found that the last 3 years have been kind of an anomaly. We all feel like we've been just kind of floating through time, and COVID time is just like its own little time period. Now when we're getting to budgeting, it feels like we actually have to go back to 2019 and kind of take a look at that time period when we're trying to compare our numbers. And you actually see that in the graphs. If you actually look back to 2019 compared to the current year, a lot of them are very similar in the numbers. Now, when everything is said and done, we were left with a fund balance of $467,000 set aside for our capital reserves. $50,000 was for emergency reserves, and $201 was set aside for maintenance reserve. We also had encumbrances, about $14,000. This was items that we had purchased. We just had not received them at the end of the year, so we kind of set aside that funding in order to cover those expenses once they finally do come in. And then we had a designated assigned fund balance for subsequent year expenditures of $10,000 with an assigned fund balance of $49,000, almost $50,000 relating to the stabilization fee. Now, we don't expect the stabilization fee to continue. So you'll notice on our graphs for the assigned fund balance, we have that one-time occurrence happening. And then next year, we probably won't see it again or any year thereafter. And then again, with our encumbrances, you see those are items, those are definitely going to fluctuate from year to year based off of what we had just ordered for towards the end of the year. And then the unrestricted, this is one that you like to see be a steady graph where a lot of those numbers are pretty similar going across. The one set of graphs that we've added this year that's a bit different than last year also relates to the fund balance breakdown. A lot of times the districts are asking us like, how are we doing, which our reserves look like. We felt that this kind of gave you a better picture as to where we stand in that perspective. So on the left-hand side for the capital reserve, emergency reserve, and maintenance reserve, you can see where those balances were over the last 10 years. With capital reserve, we've done a great job over the last few years trying to build up that reserve. That's gonna help us every time we have one of those major projects occurring. Our maintenance reserve is also gonna help maintain those projects once we do have them in place. And then the emergency reserve as our little backup fund. The state has the most restrictions with that emergency reserve. It makes it very difficult to pull those funds out. But we also can only go up to $250,000 in those funds. But you'll see on the right, the state has stipulations with each type of reserve, and they tell you how much you can put into that reserve. So we've given you a comparison as to how much we actually have in that reserve versus what, we can actually go up to. Obviously, the goal is to try and max our reserves as much as possible, so that way, in the future, we'll be able to use those reserves to help fund those projects without really impacting taxpayers as much. And our biggest driver, the enrollment. Our students are really what make up our, all of our numbers, to be honest. And over the last few years, you keep hearing me, preach about how Hunterdon County has been seeing approximately a 28% decrease amongst most of my districts. We had personally a 22% decrease over the last 10 years. And I've been pretty hopeful that over that time period, as we get further away from that 10-year mark, that things start to kind of steady out again. A lot of my districts are seeing that happen. We did have an 18% decrease over the last 5 years, but we have a 2% increase over the prior year. Another trend that we've seen amongst a lot of our districts is that the enrollment for our pre-K is going up. And this is just across the board, which is a fantastic sign because that means hopefully our enrollment is going to kind of reflect that over time too. So positive future.
Babies are being born.
Yes, babies are being born. We're interested to see the COVID babies join the group. I'm happy to answer questions if anybody has any. If you think of something later, you could always reach out to Teresa or you have my business plan.
I just a clarification. So the reserve funds, the 3 reserve funds, were those like mostly some COVID money that we just, no, it's not. So we're building, and then we need state permission to spend it?
Only, there's certain restrictions on only the emergency reserve.
Only on the emergency reserve, not on the maintenance or capital reserve?
Correct.
Okay. So it's just coincidental that it went up the same time as COVID. Because we were close,
I hear what you're saying.
to-
So, right, so in the COVID year, right, so we're thinking the end of 2020 and then the end of 2021.
Yeah.
We weren't really operating in a normal fashion. So the expenses were less in those years. So there was money available at the end of the year to put into the reserve accounts. That more so than what we've had in previous years. So they did kind of grow in those couple of
Makes
years
perfect
because
sense.
In terms of preschool revenues and that tuition going up, are we impacted in any way because of the grants we've received?
yes.
And how should we think about that?
So so we did get preschool expansion aid for this year. So when we see these next year, so now we've had to refund our tuition to all of the parents. So we won't have a revenue for tuition in this year's budget that's already set and moving forward. But the expansion aid will sort of replace that. We can have a discussion about that. We kind of have our budget review because it's not going to be in the same fund. So this is our overview of Fund 10, a little bit of Fund 20 when we're talking about the grants. But preschool expansion is going to show up in Fund 20, which is our grant fund.
Okay.
Even though it's not a grant, it's an aid and it's something different. The expenses are gonna show like in one place and then they have to be moved to another location. Some of those expenses that we currently are showing in our budget right now will be allocated over to the expansion aid
Okay.
fund. So there will be some freeing up of expenses in the general fund So I don't anticipate that the loss of the tuition this year is gonna have an impact on our budget because the expenses are also gonna move to the other fund.
And when it comes to the graph side of things, you'll just kind of see it shift from one category to the other on, the revenue side. On the expenditure side, you'll actually get to see them kind of stay the same because our graphs actually do include, the special revenue along with the, in like the other instruction category.
Okay, that helps. So it's not like next year we're gonna be like, we magically saved this money. It's just, oh,
Yeah.
we gotta remember it. Okay, got it. Thank you. Thank you.
So the entire, financial report document is in your board file and the auditor's management report is there. So if you have any additional questions after you review that, feel free to reach out to me and I can pass questions on if I can't answer them on to Laura and,
Oh, I do have to mention that we had a very, interesting visit this year. So normally we don't have a lot of exciting things happen when we come for the audit. No kids are usually here when we get our visit, but we did get to audit the Kona ice.
Where did those fences, where did they come from? It tasted delicious, right?
No
recommendations?
Right. Well, thank you very much for coming. And as always, thank you so much, Teresa, for the great job you're doing. We all appreciate you.
thank you.
Yes, thank you, Sarah.
Okay, so we'll move on. We'll let Laura and Kelsey leave because I know as exciting as our meeting is.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Good night. So we'll move on to our meeting schedule. I wanted to take a little census of who will be here on December 19th and who will not. I already know of a couple of absences, so we need to make sure we have a quorum. You'll be here.
I'll be here.
Anybody who knows.
here.
Okay, Kara's checking.
Yep.
Michael, will you be here? Okay,
Yep, I'm good.
okay. So we should be fine with the quorum. Okay, great. If that changes, if you know, obviously emergencies happen, but if something changes and you know ahead of time, please let me know. Okay, so December 19th is our December meeting, and then January 2nd is our reorg, which is, as we know. Yeah, and an unusual time for a meeting, so, okay.
Say it again?
December
an unusual
19th
time.
is the December meeting.
Right.
It's
And
just that
January
yeah, the
2nd.
reorganization
Reorg.
meeting has to happen within the first 7 days of the calendar year.
Yeah,
But it's still at
That's it, it's
6:45. When you say unusual time.
I
same
mean,
time
unusual
of day.
time of the month, not time of the day. Sorry.
Good morning meeting, everybody.
6:45.
2 p.m. Okay, so we'll move on. I don't think we have any correspondence of note tonight. We have, our election results. Congratulations, Adam and Aaron, on your reelection. And Julie Klein, was also elected. So, that will all happen at our January reorg meeting. For those of you who have to do board member training in 23, that needs to be completed by the end of the month or the end of December or sooner, hopefully. And for those people being reelected, you will also have to do your board member training for reelection. And then Teresa provided our enrollment graph. So we'll move on. Was there anything else, Teresa? I just wanted to rail through that. So we'll need a motion to approve the minutes of the October 17th regular session.
So moved.
I'll second.
Any comments or questions on the minutes? Okay, all those in favor, say aye. Opposed or abstained? Okay, then we'll move on to Jim's report.
All right, good evening, everyone. Just want to reiterate this, Kate, Teresa, great job, with, that report and, working with Laura, and it was great to be, a part of that this summer and just doing that, summary. So thank you again. Doing some great work there. Hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving. Lead off with that. We didn't have any incidents of HIV this month. Part of our new policy is just also alerting the board if there's any discretionary measures. So there was one incident where we did do a discretionary measure, so I'm just being transparent with that. But there was not any incidents for HIV. We did have one short-term suspension. It was in October. It was actually left off last month. So just adding it to, to have that record. It was a code of conduct violation, level 3, and it was 1 day in school suspension. We had our security and fire drills, 10/26, our security drill and fire drill on 10/18. And reported last month, we also had our bus evacuation drill too. Any questions with those pieces? Good, okay. I'm gonna go kind of switch gears. I left just a sheet in front of everyone down here, just basically just do a quick district goals update. We've been talking about where we stand on some of those things. So just quick overview, and then kind of just explain some of those timelines that we've been talking, that we set forward in October meeting. Blended classes, goal number 1. We continue to gather data on academic grades, honor roll, achievement, and HIV data. This is from a social aspect. So we plan to share I'll plan to share that next meeting. So just people are in the loop. The current equity plan, we have to revise that, and that's part of one of our district goals. We have yet not, we haven't got guidance yet from the DOE on this. We did contact the county office, and they said, to be coming, talking to some mentors and local superintendents. The encouragement is just continue building with the, revising with the old plan and make adjustments. So that's where we're at, and we'll be continuing doing that. And you've already seen some of that with some of our policies that we've been updating throughout this year. They're coinciding, and they'll be part of some of the things. So we already began doing some of that work, is just sort of big loop. And then our climate survey for students and staff and families, we've established our main categories is communication, school culture and climate, school safety, instruction and academics, and then extracurricular activities as some main categories. Tonight, I just wanted to share, and I left that community survey, climate survey. And this is a little small, I know, but these are, just so you can see those first pieces that we're starting to build. For some of you, I think, as part of my evaluation last year, you saw a draft of some of these pieces, but I just figured it would be great for you just to see where we're at with the communication piece, and we'll continue to build throughout this year until we get us really something that we're really liking. Hopefully in that February, March, April, so we can get it out and get some data back, get some answers back, and then, have something before we close the end of the year, hopefully. I think that would be our goal. Good there? Okay. Also then just following up two questions from last meeting. So we were talking about the NJSLA reporting, and one of the questions was, what else what else do we assess and, you know, in addition to, because I think the general consensus, well, we know we do a number of other things, so maybe, the state testing as a standalone isn't always maybe the best picture of our students and so forth. So, kind of, I put this chart together with some teammates here. Just beginning, anything you see boy or, or MOI or EOA, that's just beginning of year, end of year, middle of year, just so, I know we got a little education jargon in there, I apologize. But basically, just so you can see, in addition to all the other things, you know, it's important for our team to get a nice snapshot at the end of each school year and then have a nice snapshot right in the beginning of the school year, so we can best apply some strategies, some, you know, in-class instruction, small group instruction, whatever we may need to do to, you know, support that individual learner. And also for the learners, they're, you know, high achieving, challenging them, right? There's two pieces to that pod, for sure. So I listed just the many assessments that we do in addition that guides our instruction throughout the year to year, where we can make adjustments via team meetings through, you know, maybe special meetings or IEP meetings to do some things such as small group. I kind of listed some of those in class. One-on-one teachers, you know, that back table approach, which we often do. All right, come on back here, let's work on, get some extra reps in those things. You know, we've integrated the basic skills teacher for the last 2 years now. So for some of the new board members, that was something that we've done. RNS process, pretest, FNP. So Alphonsus vanilla, when we do that in the beginning of the year, then we also, mid-year, if we felt like there's a need to do that. And then some of the other school supports, as we said here. So big thing you've all heard about our K-4 tutor time is in year 3. That's been helpful for our K-4 learners. We've now seen the increase in some students are buying into the idea of a grade 5 through 8 support club, homework club, we're calling it, and that actually begins this week. So we're excited by that. Ms. Wozniak, science and math credentialed, as well as Ms. McCann, our ELA, will be leading that. So we're excited to see students engage and get that extra support. We're encouraging parents. I know it was a tool resource that we shared at the conferences just a week ago, that this would be a big thing for us. So those are some things, you know, that our team, you know, we're taking those assessments, we're, you know, reviewing the data, we're making these adjustments in class. Maybe there's a group of 5 out of the 10 that need to come back and do this, or a group of 3 out of that 7 that need to come back and do some small group instruction with the teacher, or have some individualized one-on-one time with the teacher throughout the course of the day. So those are those pieces. I just wanted to share that with you. And then the last piece, we had talked, you know, we were having a discussion regarding the NJLA and NJSLA scores, and how we have grades that can't be reported because they're students of total less than 10, you know, and that's per our guidance and so forth. I think I shared with the group that I would go back, and that was, you know, I got the guidance right back that you cannot share. So I did enclose what the board had asked of an encompassing of exceeding expectations, met expectation, approaching, partially met, and then did not meet across the board. So you see the number of students that we had in those areas, 21, 22 versus 22, 23, which is just what we're coming from. So that the first bar basically shows all the ELA scores in comparison, like side by side with the bar. The math scores is in the middle, and then our combination of 5th and 8th grade science scores. One thing I will say, we will at the end of this spring be able to actually use the 8th graders. This coming year's 8th graders we'd be able to look back at now their science from 5th grade next year. So next October, that's something that's probably worth, you know, taking a look at and seeing things, since we changed to the phosphor science curriculum. This is now year 3. So that's something that we could certainly, worth a look at, and I think, definitely. We want to look at that data and see, where that's lying for sure.
But it seems like even though I recognize that the data pool is really small, that you're seeing some success year over year, especially in math and science. That like the kids, especially that are on the like did not meet expectations, are starting to move a little bit up. And when you look at kind of the math and the fact that they jump from, like having 9 that didn't meet expectations down to 7. And so it seems to be whatever you're kind of catching, you're catching something in the data that's having a positive influence there, which is really, I mean, even though the numbers are small, I always find trend lines encouraging.
Yeah, I definitely think our team is aware we have a unique opportunity here at Frenchtown Elementary School, as we all talk about, but it's there, but it's for us to take advantage of. And I really do think our teachers, our students and really try their best to apply the best strategy, or whether it's instruction or, social or whatever, to maximize their participation. And that's something we really strive as a team often.
Do you as a team look at, because one of the reference points we were looking at last time is the state data and how overarching state, average student performance is per grade. And one thing that kind of helped me as I was reading is just understanding the demographics better and the expectation of how like the demo influences performance, and kind of looking at the demo of Frenchtown Elementary versus the overarching demo and understanding like, is the state data the right reference for us, or should we actually be kind of aiming lower or higher? Because when you look at the difference in the demo, is the state has around 33% economically disadvantaged students to our only 10%, right? So like even just that factor alone suggests perhaps we should be outperforming it. And right now it seems that we're slightly below the state performance on things. So is that like, I'm trying to figure out how to square these things as I'm looking at it. And again, I recognize this is one of many things we look at, but like you're the professional. So I'm like, how do you think about it? How should I think about it? Yeah.
No, I think for us, I think one of our best PD activities this year has been we did take the state testing and look at where we fell a little low, right? We also looked at where we scored high, right? I think combination of those, okay, so why are we scoring so high? And maybe on the things that we're scoring so high, maybe that pace, we don't need to spend 2 or 3 days on that particular topic, right? Maybe we just need to spend 2 days on that. And then we get a day to now go hit those two of those bullet points that were below. So I think for us, that's where I think our targeted focus is. I think for us, it's always targeted focus. Where can we help a specific student? Where can we help a specific group of students? Because it would be much more efficient to have the teacher work with 3 or 4 students if they're all having that same, area of need or area of strength too. We could be challenging them in a different way. But I would say focusing on those areas that we're showing a little bit less standard to standard is where we are. And then the teachers are changing that pace. So my example of, okay, if we're scoring really high on this 3 days, maybe we just move that to 2 days and we extend something.
Geography, my class.
Right. And we're going to increase the 3rd day, 3rd or 4th day in a cycle of, that process of that curriculum.
Got it.
And I think that's been a really ongoing conversation and a good conversation. I think our team, it's not always initially like, oh, well, this is kind of how I've done it, right?
Yeah.
But I think now our teachers have really done a great job of, you need some time, right, to review and then make those adjustments. And I think we've definitely have started to do that. And I think that's only going to help us. It's not going to show immediately. I think it will show immediately.
I mean, it's showing something, right?
Right,
Like year over year,
But you're gonna see you're gonna start seeing that in the report card first, right? Like that immediate, that assignment tomorrow or that assignment in 3 weeks. And then you'll see that kind of on the longevity of a marking period and then just build upon there.
Yeah.
And the state testing becomes a piece. We often go back to a lot of those assessments I shared earlier, you know, those beginning of year assessments and mid-year. So a lot of times sometimes we might not necessarily do a mid-year on a student if we know they had a fairly good score beginning and then we're feeling comfortable, but if not, we're gonna do another mid-year because we wanna make sure, what else do we need to do before the end of the year? And that's not just state testing, that's just that assessment and being them, meeting them to the grade level as best as we can.
Yeah.
Yes.
So if I'm thinking about it right, you're kind of adjusting the curriculum based on the needs, and curriculum is kind of like the lever you're pulling to try to make improvements.
Mhm.
Are there other levers that you think about when it comes to whether it's like not necessarily just state performance, testing performance, right? Just in terms of academic levels, what else should we be thinking about as a board that you're thinking about in terms of like what you're adjusting?
I think initial things is things that we have in play, like in our Lexia, which gives us another repetition, phonics, grammar, that type of thing. Our IXL, which is another tool for math and getting those repetitions, because we definitely need more reps, right? Whether that's in a homework, whether in a class day, those are things that we focus on. So to the bigger answer to your question is resource.
Okay.
Right, like some of the things that we're using, and those are some things that we've been using now. I could think a little bit deeper on that. I'm sure I could provide you some more, but those are,
Professional development.
oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, where we focus each year on the broader scale. Yeah, and you know, we've had some outside, you know, relationships with Frenchtown School, but outside providers that have provided some of that professional development that he's talking about.
Like physical resources, things like, you know, like if we're seeing science scores good, not being great, do we look at like, what are the resources in the science classroom? Are there potentially new needs or like actual capital investment resources? Is that one of the areas that you think about, or is that less of a kind of a input to what you get
I
out?
mean, there's only sometimes so much budgetary we can do.
Yeah.
Right, but I think, yes, I would answer like those, we look at a lot of those things. We look, you know, just a typical day, we look at a classroom environment. Like this year, we put in some flexible seating, right? Some, like you're seeing some of the things,
Yeah.
right? That's just another way to engage, you know, those one-on-one learners, some of those two-on-two teacher, you know, being comfortable within your environment type of thing, too, things that are going to support the academic learning process. So yeah, resources can be a number of things. It also could be staff if possible. That's typically not something that we are always able to do here.
That's helpful for me to know, of just like, what are kind of the different ways to address the gaps? Because I think my brain just goes to very simple solutions, you know, and then I'm like, what am I not thinking of that you guys are probably considering? Because it's probably stuff that we eventually discuss on the budget.
Mhm.
Thank you, Jennifer. I feel like every time you're teaching a class.
Well, good. We good with that
Yeah,
for now? Okay. The resource piece, we can revisit next meeting. Over those pieces. You want to do head first
sure.
and then, okay.
So we'll need a motion to affirm the HIB report from 10/17.
A second.
Comments or questions on that? Okay, all those in favor? Opposed or abstained? Okay, and we need a motion to approve the,
Yeah.
the 3-year preschool operational plan.
So just to give a quick overview, that's.
Well, let's get a motion
Yep,
first and then we
sorry.
can discuss, sorry.
I'll second.
Okay, go for it.
So, just so everyone knows that we had to put in an operational plan, which is very similar to what the plan that we approved as a team,
Mhm.
you know, as a board here in August. And, you know, we did a lot of extensive work. So, It was just a matter of putting it in the new boxes of the operational plan and presenting it, and we had to have that in by November 15th, which we had it in, the week prior. And, we're just waiting to hear back the information from that, but we reached out to our contact and she said everything seems appropriate at this point, just, wait for further guidance, and we just need the, resolution for tonight's meeting for that, to continue that process.
And just on I did the enrollment projection
Yep.
part. So on the enrollment projection, you'll see that it is at 30. And even though that's more than what they're calling our universe, so the universe that we're trying to hit, the number of students that we're trying to hit is 2 times our first grade from the prior year. Okay, so the universe number that we have approved is lower than 30, but we had to use 30 because you can't, that each classroom, in order to fund a whole classroom, it has to be divisible by 15. So you couldn't put in for less than a whole classroom, essentially. So we're more than 15, less than 30, so we
Rounded up.
rounded it.
How many do we have? Like for,
For next year, we haven't, and Jim and I have been talking about that too, if we need to move up our preschool registration in order to, because these numbers go in earlier than what we would do for other things. So the timeline
much
for the
earlier?
preschool is different. That was due on the 15th of November also.
Okay,
So everything is on a different timeline with the
Yeah.
preschool. So the
Yeah.
preschool budget is even gonna be different than the regular budget timeline.
oh my gosh, that's crazy. How many kids do we have this year in it?
Well, we currently have 11, right?
Yeah.
11.
Okay.
With one coming shortly. So by the end of, we should have the up to 12.
I don't know how you, it's like with them not lining up time-wise.
Yeah.
Challenging.
It is.
Okay.
okay, any other comments or questions? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed or abstained? Okay,
All right, I'm just gonna run through, still trying to feel this out a little bit sometimes with, the things that, the overview too, from that principal report. So I just wanted to kind of, just go over a couple quick things. It's been a while, right? So we had, the students had a great Eyes of the Wild Assembly sponsored by the PTO. Again, just can't really thank them enough. It was a great hands-on experience, a little more hands-on than I thought it was gonna be, with the animals, but Travis was awesome. So kudos to him and, moving forward. And our Halloween is always, from the students doing the scarecrows in town and community connection there, having our parade, doing Miss Hurley and all of them doing the dance. It's just, great time, supported by so many local, community members and parents and students coming out. It's just, so much to say, and so many positive comments when we post things up on our school Facebook page and so forth. So I just wanted to note those things. We also had Violence Awareness Week, where we had the police, involved in many of the activities that we had, and we did a number of things of wearing ties. We tried to change it up because we've been doing this for a few years now, ties together, and we had everyone wear ties. I thought it was a really neat thing to see how many students and staff participated in that, and not hiding from kindness and using camouflage and things like that. So, the team really tries to, spice it up per se and encourage students and staff to participate. So they did a great job. We followed by Red Ribbon Week, not too long after that. And, just basically, saying no to drugs, right? Clear message for our students and so forth. Parent conferences, we had a number of parents participate with their teachers for parent-teacher conferences. So, again, it's always great to have that conversation, as I always say. Doesn't just have to be that night, and you can always reach out, email, set up a meeting with the teachers when you need to. We're available to you. Walking school bus, we had whole of November, we're taking a break, but we did a great job. Again, so many different people participating. Our local police have been great, in just supporting us, local team members as well. We had for Fire Prevention Month, we had the fire local fire truck, Captain Atheris and his group, they were all here. So again, I just can't say enough about when we call on our community to do things like this, to educate our students, to help educate our staff, they're there for us. Fall soccer clubs are to the end, and we're on to new ones. Soccer club ended with a little annual game at the end of the year, which really was nice to see the teachers and staff, students won. And then, what else did I want to say? Fire prevention. And then just recently, right before break, we kind of surprised the middle school students. You know, there's a majority of them, there's a group of them that like to play football at recess. So with 12:30 dismissals, there wasn't recess those days. So along with the teachers and Mr. Bontempo and the local police, we were able to throw a little flag football game together with the police came, played, and it was really a great moment. I have to say, they were excited to play with the teachers, but I'll tell you, when the police came, it was just an amazing thing. So, kudos to that, you know, everyone being a part of that and our students really earning it. And, you know, they want to do it every month. And I said, well, we can continue to do well in our academics and display appropriate behavior. We can make some arrangements, I think. So, so the challenge is out. They know about that. And we'll continue to do that for sure. And just to note, our eighth graders, actually our seventh and eighth graders, are going to get the Delval orientation here tomorrow, in the morning. So that will be going on. And then next Monday, our eighth graders only are going to go to Delval and actually do the schedule. So they're going to be on one trip. So I just wanted to note those things. That's it.
If
Thank
I
you.
could just check, like, and I know I'm constantly the one chiming in, but as like a new person in Frenchtown, the Halloween display that the kids put on is spectacular. It's like, as someone who works in a creative industry, to see young people like put so much ambition, creativity, put it out there, and you could tell they were so, like, I was working from a coffee shop when they were putting them, they're so proud, and it's such interesting work. It's it's so ambitious that like, I'm just beyond impressed with their work and their like skill set. It's so cool. And I think it's like familiar to people in Frenchtown because you've been doing it for so long, but it's unlike anything I've seen, like, you know what I mean? From like big city schools, like it's just so unique and precious and cool. And I can see those young people like moving on from Frenchtown, graduating and like taking that creativity with them. And you could even see them at the park. They're just cool kids. You know what I mean? And you can see it in them. And I think there's something really special and really rich happening in the arts classroom here that like, I wanted to like vocalize it because you can see it on the street. It's that special.
Yeah.
And so like, just kudos to the teacher and the students for being so brave and the like tradition of keeping it up. Because I think it's just like, it's so special. It's so cool.
And to piggyback on that, my kids who are junior in high school and freshman in college saw them this year and we're like, oh my gosh, and they were talking about what they did when they were here. And so it was very cool. You know, they wanted to go around and see all them. And I was like, okay, that's pretty cool that high schoolers want to see what the kids have done this year. So yeah, it's like you said, we do kind of get used to it so it's good to see the excitement, you know, it kind of brings you back.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But it wouldn't
thank
be
you.
Halloween without it. I feel.
I was more jazzed about it than the new like art yard exhibit. I was like, it's constantly open. You know, that's great.
Well, thank you. I'll definitely pass that on to the team for sure. Thank you.
Okay.
Yep, thank you.
All right. So the first order of business in my report is our negotiations committee. I'd like to thank Erin and Michael and Rachel for their willingness to participate. So we will begin meeting in the next month or so with the FEA, and we'll come to the board probably not at the reorg meeting, but the second meeting in January to have a conversation in executive session about kind of expectations and where we want to go with the contract. So we will need a motion to appoint, the 4 members of the negotiations committee.
I'll make the motion.
Seconded.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed or abstained? And again, thank you for your willingness, everybody. So the second thing, is on our addendum, which is the resolution that we discussed at our last meeting. Adam, do you want to take a minute to talk about, the meeting that you attended in Holland?
Sure.
Thank you. And thank you for going to that.
Yeah, no problem.
Not in town.
No problem. Yeah, so last Tuesday, the Holland Board of Ed had, what was essentially an interview with a law firm that provides these kind of consulting services for regionalizations. For basically setting up the study and helping apply for the funds for the study. They didn't even talk about any of the mechanics of regionalization, so who would go where or anything like that. The thing that was most surprising to me, I'm not sure if anyone else in the meeting felt the same way, was that they kind of focused on K-12 regionalizations, like top to bottom.
I took out of it that K-12 needed to be one of the options that the state is looking for
Yeah.
in the application in order to fund it.
That's exactly
Not
right.
that it was the only option, but that needed to be one of the options.
Yes, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
But they also said though was, my notes here. I don't think that- that they get those K through 12 results are given higher priority. And like you said, it's definitely one of the options on the table to give us the best chance of approval. But it is a higher priority though. It seems that was one of the things that they said. They talked a bit about the timeline of the process. Applications are accepted on a rolling basis. It takes 2 months to a year for an application to be approved. Again, this is just for the regionalization study. It's not for regionalization itself. It's just for the study. The study itself takes 4 to 5 months. And it's performed by an expert firm, not these lawyers, but a group of experts who aren't lawyers apparently.
Lawyers essentially act as the general contractors for the job.
Yeah.
That's where they're like, then we get the plumbers to look at, population trends, then we get the electricians, they're gonna look at it, like the financial trends.
Right.
Like they pick the right people to hire for the job and they're like the go-to.
Right, exactly. Trustee, remember if the study contract would be between the district and that specialty firm, or to be with Porzio, and they would subcontract to the specialty firm.
I got the impression that Porzio was the group that would conduct the study.
Okay,
I got the impression that they would hire the people who would then conduct the study. And then like direct those and
Yeah.
help the school system kind of.
they referred to them as
like, shape
experts,
it.
but it wasn't
Yeah.
quite clear if they're in-house experts or another firm. Well, whatever it is.
Okay.
Let's see, well, I got the impression that, they weren't really up on how the schools are set up in our sending districts. Because they didn't seem to understand in some ways that we had a regional high school. But all our sending districts were different combinations of K through 8 and K through 6, or K through 5 in middle school and so on. So I don't think they've done a lot of homework, not that they're necessarily expected to, but because it's more sort of interviewing them than anything else. But again, that's why there wasn't much discussion about specific mechanics. I think not they would have, but there wasn't a lot we could talk about in terms of our sending districts unique.
I think that's what the study tells you,
Yeah,
right?
okay.
So that's the purpose of the study, is to find out all of those different options.
Right. Well, I mean, we all know what our districts look like, but I don't think they had such a good impression.
They said they've seen it all.
Right, they did say
They
that.
did say that.
Let's see what else here.
Send them out of New Jersey.
One of the interesting discussions was about what if not all the districts approve of, the regionalization in the referendum. And the answer to that was that the districts that do approve the regionalization plan can move ahead with it. Those that don't become part of a send receive arrangement where, you know, the budget, and maybe trust me, you're more clear than this than I am, but you end up paying tuition to whatever grades your district is not serving, so high school, whatever it would be. And so that money from the levy would go to the K-8 district, let's say, and then they would pay tuition to the high school for the grades, for grades 9 through 12.
That's why I had asked the question that I asked, because
Oh, that was the answer. That was your question, wasn't it?
I've been part of all options, right? I've worked for a send district to that sends to a receiving district. I've worked for a receiving district that, receives students, and then the regional. So I kind of have an idea and experience with all of the options. So what happens with a send receive is the tuition is part of the K-8 budget. The way I used to say, it's really a K-12. I'm responsible, even though I'm only servicing in my buildings, K-8, I'm responsible for the education of all the 9 through 12, and it's in the K-8 budget. So that would have, just think what that would do to our budget, right? Like if we had tuition now that we had to put into our budget for the number of students that we're sending to the high school, where does that tax base come from? Because at the regional, there's a separate tax rate and a separate levy. The way I understood it, and it's kind of what I wanted to hear, is that levy becomes part of the K-8 levy. And then I don't know if it adjusts based on what the tuition is, because they indicated there was a send receive that actually saved money and was able to reduce their tax overall. Because for whatever reason, the tuition was less than what they were paying for, regional tax. So it's the way I understood it is that levy would become part of the K-8, and then we could assess how much of that we needed to support pre-K through 12.
Did they mention anything? So let's say if someone opts not to, and you're talking the high school, but I thought if they were looking at regionalization, it wouldn't be as divided as it is now, potentially, right? I mean, we don't know, because that's an option. That's an option, right? So I guess, let's just say one district doesn't, but yet the plan had included, or I guess they give different options, and if one doesn't, then they don't go with that option, right?
It
Because
made it seem like almost like an a la carte, like we will present many options. You can opt in or out depending on your district's choices. And then like whichever districts decide to share either resources or whatever, like, cause am I right?
that could
Like, Adam,
change
you're
it,
some-
right? Like if you
Yeah.
have 3 districts that say, no, we're not gonna do it, then the 2 that are, that plan is gonna look very different than
Yeah.
if everybody had done it,
Yeah.
obviously. So that, okay.
Right.
Interesting.
What happens if, and I don't know if you know the answer to this question, but what happens if, like, 2 districts go in on the regionalization study and one district decides they'd like to move forward and put it up for vote, and the other district says, no, we're not interested in doing that?
It depends on what the vote is, right? So if the vote is to become a K-12, then I think that they could go on their own. If the vote would be to become a regional K-8 or K-5 or, something of that nature, you'd need more than one.
You're gonna need a collaboration.
Need a quorum.
So.
You'd need more than one.
Yeah, so if, let's say Tuesday, we're gonna be,
Takeover, good, yeah.
Well, how
Yeah,
did
you
you do a K through 12 if only one, like if one K-8 is like, oh, we want to go ahead and regionalize, they can put up a vote for K through 12 district on all 5 sending districts?
No,
No.
only be
No,
on
just that
there.
one.
so they would be the only
So
one that would be
wouldn't-
K to 12
but
and
it would
everybody
be,
else.
And then everyone else becomes a send receive.
So one district could make that decision?
That's how I understand it.
But how could they force the high school? Like, if we decide like, okay, we want to be regional, how could we, little Frenchtown, be like, okay, we've created a K through 12
That's a
region?
good question.
Like,
Yeah.
it
Yeah,
doesn't
that's
seem
a-
to make sense,
That's a
you
good,
know?
yeah, that's.
Cause Del Val's separate right now,
Yeah,
yeah.
Del Val,
But we're already regional.
Right, but
And you
how
have
could
to-
we be the ones
the other
to be
thing
like,
is-
this is
Yeah.
what we're gonna do?
oh, well, wait a second though, because in order to do that, all the districts would have to vote to de-regionalize, to
First.
re-regionalize, which
You
is
might be
not gonna
right.
happen.
You might be right.
Yeah,
Oh, so
That's a good
they have to, so they all have to vote for
in the
that?
same election, you have to de-regionalize
The 9 through 12.
the 9 through 12, and then regionalize K through 12.
So doesn't
I
that
think you're
take
right.
away the whole thing of that one could choose or
Yeah,
two
yeah,
could do what they
yeah,
want?
So I
You
was
could
wrong.
never do that, because the other four are gonna be like, we're not gonna vote to de-regionalize, but we're not gonna regionalize.
Right.
I think
Like,
this is where like
You're like,
Adam
"Well, first time,
said, that like the lawyers weren't necessarily in tune with how we're organized,
Possibly, yeah.
sort of like.
Mhm.
Well, the other thing I would say though, is there isn't a lot of experience, just because there
Yeah.
haven't been that many regionalizations. I mean, up until 5 years ago, I think there were like, I remember going, and it might have been the same law firm. Did they do South? Do you know?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
probably to do all
so,
of them.
yeah. So, yeah, so it was these guys that were like, in the last 30 years, there have been 4 regionalizations and 4 deregionalizations, like in other
Yeah.
districts. So it's like, it was like even now. Now, in the last few years, there have been more, but, there's just not a lot to go on. It's like,
The K through 12 discussion, and correct me if I'm wrong, seemed mostly just as like, you have to have it as an option to get the grant. They were just, I don't know that they were suggesting that that's a serious option for anybody, but just that like, that option needed to be considered and evaluated, and the likelihood of it happening is
Right.
kind of none, but just for the state to be more likely to consider the study, you kind of want to say, we also want to evaluate this bit.
The other thing they mentioned, which I didn't quite understand, they, I don't think dig into very deeply, but, the lawyer said that the equalized property value formula would affect each district differently. And I wasn't quite sure what the math was behind that. It sounds like, you know, you could come up with sort of a median value of all the homes or something like that, and then that affects the tax levy. But, that on the face of it sounds absurd, so I'm not sure if
Yeah,
that's what
I'm
they
not
meant or
sure
not.
how that would work. Like I said, I know how we do our tax rate versus how the high school does their tax rates, very different. So I'm not sure how that adjusts when you're
Yeah.
including,
Yeah, I can see that being a big question from
yeah.
taxpayers.
They did also indicate, unless I heard it wrong, you can correct me, that if there would be savings, there are ways in which that savings could be spread across all of the districts, that it's not just one district or 2 districts, but that it could be spread across all of the districts.
I can't remember that. That was it? Oh, that's your question you wanted me to ask, Kate. They said they did not expect, they didn't see any, there were no new parameters to think that the ones that are in there are bad
Okay.
enough as they are.
okay.
For the funding.
The state pays for all of this, the law firm and the study if they go forward with it, everything.
That's what was been told, yeah. So,
I know, I think they'd save a lot of money if they just didn't do the studies. Give the money back to schools.
President Brownwood
Yeah.
doesn't come
I mean, think
cheap.
about how much money is going on.
And then it
well,
Know that from what-
potentially seems like a study that just might not work, you know, with so many players for us, like having to say yes to something, but anyway. I guess time will tell.
so the decision that needs to be made tonight is whether we want to pass a resolution to, and the resolution, if you read it, is really just expressing an interest in working together to move forward. included in the resolution is the fact that it's no cost to the district. And also that there's no,
We're not bound by.
no obligation to move forward once the results are there. So I don't know what, what people's thoughts are about moving forward with approving the resolution. We, last time we spoke about it, everybody felt that it was worth looking and, worth moving forward and expressing the interest, because what do you have to lose kind of thing. I will say that I did ask Holland, and there are no other districts who are interested other than Holland.
Again.
The high school, Alexandria, Milford, and Kingwood are not interested in even passing this resolution.
Wow.
And I thought that was information that we should kind of be aware of.
So because of that, it sounds like we wouldn't get the study, we wouldn't qualify for the study anyway. I mean, if they're choosing among different districts in order to do regionalization studies and only 2 are going in on it, why would they choose to work with us? Why would the state choose to pay this law firm to work with us when there's other jurisdictions that are
So
gonna
the
be
way
a
that it
little more?
works, so you need to do the study.
Yeah,
There you go.
But you can include in the study,
Everybody else.
everybody.
oh, they're gonna love that.
Yeah, and so that was the thing I found interesting from the beginning, like, whether you're in it or not, like,
You're in it.
your business office is gonna have to provide information, and your district is gonna have to come out, like, you're in it. Whether you're,
Yeah.
Wow.
and I mean, it puts us in a little bit of a difficult situation, because basically, if we don't move ahead, it's not happening. Because Holland can't do it by themselves. So, and I don't mean that to put any pressure on anybody or anything, I'm just, it does put us in a weird situation.
I feel we owe it to constituents of our district, the Frenchtown district. Because it's been something we've talked about for a long time, and it's been, and the reactions in Frenchtown have been mixed, but we've always sort of like wanted to understand more.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And this could help us go that direction. Also, it's, well, think about our district and our kids, even if we only regionalize with Holland, would that be a good thing?
mhm.
Would it be better for our kids? And I'd rather know the answer to that than not even research it.
There's also so much to be gained from the data they're gonna offer, regardless of the recommendations and whether or not we follow them. Things like they look at, like what are the population trends over the next decade and what does that potentially mean for the school? That's data we can't gather on our own, like we need an.
Yeah, we're
expert
certainly not gonna pay
Yeah.
to get it, we can't pay to get it. Yeah.
Inputs that would help us, even if we just remained as we are, kind of put together better plans down the line.
So right,
I think just for that, to me, it's useful. And then when I think about the conversations that are constantly had around town, it gives you a data set to start from a factual place when you're discussing it with the council or anybody else really around how do we plan for the future of our school? And so I'm sort of with Adam where it's the least we could do because it doesn't cost us anything and it doesn't rope us into anything.
Right.
No, I don't really care if Kingwood and Alexandria get pissed off with us, whatever. Their feelings aren't my concern.
Well, information gathering, right, I feel like
Well,
they don't
that's-
have a right
yeah.
to get annoyed at that, we're not committing them to anything yet. Have we figured out any downsides to going ahead with it, if we're saying no money, no, that we're not locked into it? Is there anything that maybe I'm missing?
I think it's Jim's time and Teresa's time.
Yeah,
Because that's the
Oh, okay,
resources to submit a lot of
Okay.
information. Sorry, Jim.
Yeah, and the only thing I would, and I can ask Matt, I would really kind of be interested in knowing, like, if Holland and Frenchtown move forward and do this study, and Holland is like, yeah, let's go, let's do it, and Frenchtown says, no, we don't want to put it on the ballot, or vice versa, what happens then? So I don't feel like we have a real answer to that
What
question.
happens then in what respect?
What are
So,
the consequences for our district?
Or for Holland, does that then say that they can't do it?
well, and,
Is that what you mean, or?
yeah, I mean,
They can't put anything on the ballot that
They can't.
impacts another municipality, where they
yeah. So, yeah, okay.
gotta arm wrestle for it.
Yeah. Flip a coin. Okay, anybody else? Michael, Aaron, Rachel?
So even if we approve this resolution, the timeline to start it would be,
Sounds like years.
yeah, at least
Yeah.
2 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nothing goes quickly when you're dealing with the state, right?
But it could be as, like, if you anticipate their fastest timeline, right, 2 months to approval and 4 to 6 months for a study, like, 2 years is on the long end, 8 months is on the short end to recommendation.
Well, there's also the period to prepare the application.
Yeah,
What are
just so
your
we're not
thoughts,
surprised if
Michael?
it like comes this time next year.
Right.
I would agree with these two,
You agree?
yeah.
Rachel?
Yeah, I guess the only thing holding me back is wondering, like, why is nobody else, even just curious about the, what that would look like, so I get, but I am
Don't
inclined
care
to
about the
say,
children's shop.
There what?
but I have heard people say, even older kids, like, oh my gosh, we haven't, changed we haven't looked into it yet, so.
So I will say in watching, and I don't mean to pick them out, but it's the only one I've seen. I watched the discussion at the high school, and they've had the discussion twice up there. And 90% of the conversation is about the benefits and disadvantages of regionalization. Like, they're 2 steps ahead and kind of talking about it, whereas I'm looking at it much more, as Adam said, like, what do we have to lose? Like, let's get more information and, on behalf of our constituents, know what we're looking at.
Yeah.
I can't speak for anybody else, and that's only what I've seen in public meetings. So I'm thinking maybe that's why that the other districts are just like, we don't want to regionalize, and
There does seem to be like and this is just gathering from like public, especially social media information, is like, there's a lot of confusion around what regionalization actually means, and this assumption that it equals closing down schools, which it does not. Like, lots of the options mean all schools stay open, but certain resources are shared, for example. So
Or that you stop paying taxes for the school.
yeah, so I think there's just this like
Yeah,
also
well,
lack of understanding of
yeah.
what the potential outcomes
That-
are. And if you think in Milford, you're like, oh, they're gonna shut down our school. No, let's not do it. We don't want, like, it's such a drastic idea of what it could potentially lead to. But in reality, it's like, that might not even be a potential, like suggestion they put on the table.
and also I think there is this push, when people talk about regionalization, most of the time, like members of the public, you hear it as like a tax saving
Yeah.
measure, and it's not been found to be that. So I think there's knowledge on the part of the boards that knows, like, the only reason the public's interested, or thinks the only reason the public's interested is to save taxes, and if it's not gonna do it, why bother? But,
Because it has been pitched as that, as like a potential tax saving solution. So,
By people who don't know the history of it or
yeah,
understand what mechanics would be involved. For example, transportation,
Right.
you know.
right. Well, like somebody said to me, the other day, well, you'd be saving 4 superintendent salaries or 5 superintendent salaries if it was okay. Like, we don't even have 5 superintendents in the.
We've got a blended.
Like, we've got all sorts of things and you still need an administrator in the building, like there's, So I think there's a lot of misunderstanding, so the option is to pursue more information or not. Do people feel ready to vote or, okay? All right, so then we will need a motion to approve the regionalization study resolution.
So moved.
Okay, further comments or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed or abstained? Okay,
No abstentions, all in favor, right?
yes.
Yep.
It was
Scored that one
unanimous.
correctly.
Yeah. Okay, all right, so we'll move forward with the consent agenda. And we'll need a motion to approve items 10.1 through 11.9, including the additional personnel and field trip from the addendum.
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay, comments or questions?
Do you have a replacement custodian?
I'm sorry?
Do you have a replacement custodian?
No, not yet.
Okay, I just realized I did that incorrectly.
It's okay.
Good, but we can do that, we can.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I recorded it.
I was like, wait. Thank you.
Do you know if Edward Eckert is also known as Chuck? Oh, Santa lives here in the corner.
Oh.
Wait, say it
well,
again?
Santa.
Yeah,
It's,
that's all I know. I know him from the gym. I was like, that might be the same guy. Is that him?
I think that is.
Excellent. He's great. Nice man.
Oh, and,
Pretty sure we're talking the same.
another one of our substitutes, is the gentleman we interviewed to be on the board,
I thought so.
Yeah.
That name rang a bell.
Yeah. who also seemed like a really nice
Yeah.
man.
He did, yeah.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, then we'll need a roll call.
Mr. Blackburn,
Yes.
Mrs. Bobrowski,
Yes.
Mr. Germany,
I,
Ms. Howard. Yes. Ms. Nakahara,
Yes.
Ms. Portello,
Yeah.
Mrs. Nugent.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think so. Okay. Okay, is there any other new business?
Clarification question around the lights. Is that for fixing the existing lights or is it the addition of crosswalk lights?
Oh, it's for fixing
The existing,
existing lights which are not functioning.
no, oh yeah, are facing like the opposite direction. So when people are really coming fast down 8th Street, alert them. Just anyone driving from that 1 yard.
Before we adjourn, I did want to ask the board one other question about the regionalization study. Is there anything specific in, like Adam had mentioned, that K through 12 has to be an option that's discussed? Is there any other option that this board feels should really be looked into, like 7 through 12 or K through 8 or?
I have one area of study I would like them to consider, just after reading up on the Lambertville regionalization, because that was considered a success, but mostly it's like a financial success. But like, Jim, you'll love this, the test scores. And so I'm curious around, how do they evaluate potential impact on academic performance? Because it seemed like it was not a really big chunk of the regionalization study for Lambertville. And it, like, I would love to have some level of kind of like influence there. So as they're doing the studies and presenting what, like, whatever options they are, so if they're like, there should be like a middle school where all the schools are combined. I would want
Right,
them to
because that's better for
consider
instruction
Yeah,
or something.
academic.
Yeah.
I would say a middle school, regional middle school, and or a regional 7 through 12.
Okay, which makes sense for our district because that's
Mhm.
where we have felt there's always been a need. Okay. All right, anything else before we adjourn?
No executive session?
So, Russell,
This-
something.
This on the executive session was more for budget guidance.
Oh, it was, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Okay, so we need a motion to move into executive session.
Seconded.
Any comments or questions? All right, let's. All those in favor? Opposed or abstained? Okay,
Okay, 1 second.
I don't think we even need to close the door.
Yeah, no, we gotta turn off the.
We gotta turn off the camera, but not close the door.
Yeah, perfect for timing. I think we're good.
Okay, go ahead.
Jim, I have a question for you.
Okay.
In regards to the climate survey that
Yeah.
was attached in the packet, is there a particular way you'd like feedback, or would you like feedback, or is that just an FYI for us?
Yeah, I think we're keeping you in the loop. I think if there's something, that you feel like, this board would feel like, is really important or, a question missed on there, I would just bring it to the next meeting and let, everybody kind of weigh in. That would be my suggestion.
Question for you.
Yeah.
Is this a portion of the climate survey, or is?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so where can I access the other portion?
So there'll be-
I'm not suggesting anything that like is already covered.
It's
Right.
being created.
So
Okay.
it's in process. So just giving you pieces as we go through,
Okay,
to kind of weigh in, and I'll keep bringing, additional pieces each meeting. So we have, by the time we'll get to it, we'll get, fairly formalized draft,
okay.
right? And just so everybody is certain of what we're going out with. Because we definitely want to make sure that we feel good about it and, ascertain the things we want to get, right?
And then this section, if I'm reading it right, is mainly around school communication.
Mhm.
So any feedback should be around communication period.
Correct.
And last question, I promise. Does the climate survey go out? I understand it goes to parents, it goes to students. Does it go out to staff as well?
It
So
will.
then we need some like staff specific
Correct.
questions around, okay.
No.
All of the answers, I think.
All right, yeah, for sure. And, I think, in the new year, we'll have we'll be working with a much, I'll put it on a link, and some people from last have seen, the draft as part of my evaluation last year. So there's pieces, but I'm tweaking some pieces now, 6 months later, 3 months later,
Yeah.
that type of thing. So, okay.
So we'll need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed or abstained? Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.